Hey guys, and welcome back to Weekly Kaiju Reviews, and this is episode 11. And today we're having another look at an Ultra Kaiju. Now some of you may recognize him straight off the bat, and some of you who know the character may not recognize him due to the sort of weird figure that we have here today. And this is Gesura from the original Ultraman series. Now this figure was released by a company called Popy, which up until receiving this figure I had never heard of. And they're an older company. Apparently they did a lot with die-cast metals, a lot of superhero figures. Apparently they did some Western ones like Spider-Man, etc. But they did a lot of Ultraman figures as well, and robots, that kind of thing. And they did some Kaiju figures. And this is the only one I have actually ever seen in the flesh. I've seen some online after having seen this, but this is the only one I've ever actually seen up close. So we're going to dive straight into this and have a look at Sculpt, as always. So, starting off first of all with the head, the sculpt is actually pretty decent, I would say, on the head. If we just have a look there, it's got some good definition to it. You can tell what's going on. He's got a weird fish-like face. He's got these really nicely done sort of bulging eyes and the sort of fish lips. Go right around to here if you can see that in this light. The teeth are not individually sculpted, which is a shame, but they are nicely defined, I guess. The inside of the mouth has a little bit of detail, but not much. Yeah, so he's got these nice ridges and stuff like that, and the skin texture is really nice. It looks really slimy as well, which it isn't, but they've achieved a nice effect with that. If we turn the head around, you can see it's got all these spines and this dorsal fin. Now the spines are quite nicely done. One thing I will point out straight away is that this figure is made of very brittle, hard vinyl, and as such you can see that some of the spines have snapped off. Now these spines were missing after I received this figure. As soon as I receive figures, they more or less go on my shelf and stay on the shelf. So there's not really much room for them to get broken up, so the spines were actually missing when I got them. Now I'm not sure whether that's happened in the mail. I couldn't find any broken spines in the packaging, so I assume they were lost beforehand. Yeah, it doesn't. In a way, it kind of adds to the figure, but yeah, there's meant to be obviously more spines, and these ones are meant to have tips. But they're quite nicely done, and the dorsal fin is nicely sculpted in itself. Still the same sort of slimy skin texture, which is nice. If we go down the back, you can see he's got this little tuft of spines here. A couple of them are missing as well, as you can see, these two here and that one. But again, they're still nicely done, and then you've got this other ridge here that's pretty nicely done for the age of the figure. I believe, from what I could find out about this figure in this range, I believe this figure's either from the late 70s or the very early 80s. But then you've got these scales, which are nicely done. There's nice enough depth between the scales, adds more definition. They go all around the body there, on the torso and things. They are not on the underarm here, though. The underarms have the same slimy skin texture as the head, which is nice. The arms also have these dorsal ridges here. Well, these sort of fins anyway, and more of the spines, which are nicely done. Some longer spines here. You can see that one's like a curved one, etc. The hands aren't overly detailed. They take away sort of from I think the face is relatively threatening. It's quite a gross, quite an angry looking monster there, but the hands are kind of adorable, so sort of takes away from it a little bit. If we go down, he's just got more of these spines and like on his hips there. A couple more fins by his arse. One of the spines has come off here to the point where there's actually a hole in the vinyl. But again, I can't fault the figure on having holes in it, because that's obviously wear and tear from being previously owned. And there's sort of definition on his feet, but it's weird because it looks like definition I would expect to see on the suit of the character. So I suppose that's quite cool. It gives the impression of what the bottom of the suit might actually look like. So that's pretty cool. If we turn him here, you really probably won't be able to see it in this lighting, but there's a little bit of Japanese up here. And you've got the company's logo there, and then Japan, but there's no date. Or there could be a date in the Japanese, I guess, but there is no date from what I can see. So, as I said, I'm going to guess that this is late 70s, early 80s. If this is indeed late 70s, then this is the oldest figure I have. I think this is pretty much one of the oldest figures in my collection. And as such, I can't really fault the sculpting, to be honest, because the sculpt is pretty good. It's a lot better than a lot of the 80s figures I've got. I have an 80s Red King who's pretty poor even compared to this, and I have a Mecha Godzilla that's relatively poor compared to this from the 80s. So yeah, for the time, I think the sculpting is really great. I think the best part of the sculpting is definitely the face, and while it doesn't look really anything like Gesura, it is a very, very threatening looking face. What I'll do is I'll put a picture. I haven't quite figured out the software I'm using at the moment, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the description. Actually, I'm going to put a link on an annotation on Gesura's face. If you click this, you'll see what Gesura is supposed to look like. So you can compare how he's supposed to look like to how this figure of him looks. It's not very accurate in the slightest. It looks more like his original appearance. So I'll link to an image of his original appearance on his face. But yeah, it's not very accurate, but it is a nice thing in itself. Quite like last week's Gigan. I mean, Gigan was closer to the actual figure, to the actual character than this figure is to Gesura, but it's still got its own thing, which I like about figures when they try and mix it up a bit. And I do really, really like the sculpting on the face. It's a weird little figure, this. Now, talking about paint, a lot of the other Popy figures that I saw have the sort of the bull mark problem, where the figures are relatively decently sculpted, but they seem to be in stupid colours. Like, I've seen a lot of bull mark figures that are like completely the wrong colour, like bright orange Destroyer figures and sort of green Ghidorah figures and things like that, and they're just all luminescent colours, which I've never really understood, and a lot of the Popy ones seem to be the same. And while this figure is wrong in its colours, they're very, I don't know, it doesn't have the same sort of neon vibe. It has a really sinister look to it, and I like that about this one. Obviously the base colour of the vinyl is this grey colour, as you can see on the feet. So the rest of the figure is actually completely painted, apart from obviously you've got bits at the bottom of his feet there that are not painted as well, and you can see where it's faded on the hands and a bit on the head. What the main bulk of the paint is a sort of black, and the black has been spattered and detailed with this sort of like congealed blood red, and it's really good. The paint's relatively sloppy in a way. I mean, it's good for an early figure, but early figures were quite sloppily painted. But it just gives a very sinister vibe, because you've got this side of the face that's kind of like grey and black and stuff, and then you've got this side of the face, and because of the way it's painted, it looks almost blood splattered, as if it's been like, you know, murdering things, and it's just got some of the blood stained up its face, which is a really cool little thing. Like, I don't think that was intentional. I think it's just paint fading over the time. But yeah, it's really sinister looking, and it does add to it. Like, the rest of the body doesn't so much look like blood splatters. The rest of the body just looks like it's kind of a sickly red and black colour to the skin, but it's just the face. The face just has that sort of weird blood splatter effect, and I think it adds. I mean, look at that. Look at that. That side of that creepy face sculpt with the weird sort of blood splatter up it. I think it's a really sinister looking figure, and I really like that about it. Considering Gesura was kind of a daft looking figure, like, this figure sort of, in some angles, looks kind of funny, and then in other angles looks really threatening. So yeah, I think the paint job, while slightly sloppy as early figures are and kind of simplistic, on this figure, I haven't seen any other pictures of any other of this Popy Gesura, but mine specifically has a bit of a sinister paint job. So yeah, I'm happy with the paint job on this thing. So this figure has 3 points of articulation. The head rotates 360 degrees, and both of the arms rotate 360 degrees, and that's it. There's no waist articulation, there's no leg articulation, but that's fine. I mean, if you look at it, if you had articulation on this, it would sort of ruin the fin, and if you had it on the legs, it would ruin all this. The articulation is a little bit stiff. The arms are fine, the arms move alright, but the head is a little stiff. It goes to about there, and then it gets a little bit stiff to rotate all the way around, and then it comes smooth again about here. One thing I will point out is these are actually really brittle, and they're quite sharp, so when you're like rotating it, you kind of have to push them, and you get it. It's look at that. It's yeah, it's a painful little figure to articulate, but no, it's cool. The articulation is good. Maybe not as many points as I would have liked, but you know, looking at it objectively, if there was any more, it probably would have ruined the sculpt. So in terms of articulation, yeah, this is fine. It's functional enough. The head's a little stiff. Yeah, is my only real gripe. So in terms of pricing, I paid around 12 quid for this with £3 or £4 postage. I can't remember exactly where it came from. I think it came from like Ireland or somewhere like that, so the postage was a bit more. But yeah, I think that's a good price, 12 quid for this. I don't count postage prices as price for the figure, so yeah, I would say 12 quid for this is good. I have seen two more online since, both going for between 12 and 18 quid. I think the higher end of that, I think maybe 18, 20 quid is a little much for this. I'm not quite sure because I don't know much about the Popy figures. I don't know whether this is worth anything. It might be worth more than that, but I would say I would only really want to pay maybe 12 to 15 pounds most for this. It's a good figure, but it's not the best, and it's just more of a novelty because of how weird it is. So I wouldn't want to pay more than 12 or 15 quid for a weird figure like this. But as I said, I'm not quite sure how much the Popy figures are worth. If I find out this is worth more than that, I'll update you guys. But yeah, for the time being, I don't think it's particularly worth much more than that. So yeah, if you can find this for 12 to 15 quid, I would highly recommend it. Any more than that might be a little bit steep. For scaling, I'm going to be using two figures from two of the more common Ultraman ranges. First of all is the Ultra Monster series, and this is the Gomez figure we had a look at a couple of weeks ago, who is 6 inches, as you can see there. If we just angle the camera back and up slightly, you can see Gomez is slightly bigger. And including the horn, which adds to the 6 inches, I'd say this guy, I'd say Popy Gesura is maybe 5.5 inches. I don't think the horn and the forehead's an extra inch. I'd say that's maybe half an inch or something. So yeah, I'd say maybe 5.5 inches. And just as another size comparison here, if we just move Gomez to the side there, we have the most common, well, one of the more common figure lines at the moment for the Ultras, and that is the Spark Doll range, and this is Ultraman King. So if we stand him here, you can see he's about 4.5 inches. So yeah, oh sorry, he's about 5 inches. So yeah, you can see the Gesura is probably about 5.5 inches there. Which yeah, I'd say that's accurate. So you've got Ultraman King on the side here at 5 inches. You've got Gesura here at 5, and you've got Gomez here at 6. So it's going to fit in all right, I think, with the ranges of figures, because it's big and it's small enough to fit in with the Spark Dolls, but it's big enough to fit in with the Ultra Monster series. Because I mean, objectively, these two ranges don't really fit in together because these are too big for these guys. But I think this guy fits in just about with both ranges because he's a nice middle ground in terms of sizing. So at the end of the day, would I recommend the Popy Gesura? Yes and no. I think it's definitely the worst in terms of representation of Gesura, of all the Gesura figures I've seen. Although I do like it a lot more than some of them. I like it a lot more than the Ultra Monster one, and I like it a lot more than the Bullmark one, despite it not being as good quality as the Ultra Monster one. I like it partially because of how weird it is. I like figures that are a bit more obscure, like the Gigan we had a look at last week. Isn't particularly accurate, but I liked it because it had its own thing going on. So yeah, I think I like that about it. And just overall, the paint's pretty interesting, and the sculpt is good. It's just, again, not very accurate. But yeah, the paint job's really great, and it adds a really sinister touch to this figure, which is a big plus for me. And the articulation is pretty good, and it seems to be relatively affordable. So at 12 quid, I would say this is a perfectly decent pickup. Maybe towards the 20 quid range is a bit much, but if you want to pay that much for it, fair enough. But yeah, I would say if you can find it for 12 quid, pick it up. Sorry it's been a slightly shorter review than normal, guys, but I am quite busy. I'm sort of preparing to go away for a few days now to visit a friend of mine. So I'm not going to have much time to do this over the weekend, so that's why I wanted to film it today. Now, this will either be uploaded on the Thursday that I film it on, or it will be uploaded on Sunday. So if I decide to upload it on Sunday, I would have put up a little update video in the week, just explaining. So anyway, I've rambled enough. Thank you for sticking around. Next week, we're probably going to be having a look at the 12-inch plush Megalon figure. The 12-inch plush Megalon from Godzilla Origins by Toy Vault. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys in episode 12.